Round three, are you ready? So if you notice here, I just want to go through and talk about the end here. I hadn't constructed this last segment, so I constructed, so here we have our square. Our diagonal lengths are AD, right? So this diagonal is the same length as this one. They intersect at 90 degrees, they bisect each other, so all these segments are congruent in here. These lengths are all the same. These are 90-degree angles right here. They're all perpendicular. So there you have it. So notice when we use that length as diagonal, the square is a lot smaller because our diagonals are clearly longer than our side lengths, right? That's the hypotenuse of the right triangle, which is the longest side of the right triangle. But anyway, there we go. Here, final construction, which actually, luckily, is one of the easiest ones, or the easiest one, I should say. That is to construct a rhombus with length AD. Okay, rhombus of length AD. So this time I just want you to start with a length A. You go up here to this segment AD, you open your compass to that length so you can replicate it down below. So I put my compass point back here on A, and I'm going to make a little arc. Again, I'm going to choose anywhere on that arc to make my D, because it really doesn't matter. I know that wherever I put a dot on this arc, that's going to be this length AD. So I chose to make it there, so now I have a length of AD. Okay, well that's one leg, that's one part of my rhombus. So that's one side of my rhombus, not a leg, but one side of my rhombus right there. Oops, it's a little off. So how do I make the other three sides, knowing they have to be the same distance away? Well, if I continued with this, let's make it a different color. If I continued with this arc and went around, well, I know it has to be the same distance up here, right? Or from D. I also know it has to be the same distance. So this right here has to be the same distance. So what can I do? I can just make an arc this way. So in other words, what did I just create? I created an equilateral triangle, right? An equilateral triangle. So right here is another length that's the same. So if I connect from here to here, I don't want to connect from here to here. That's not good enough. I have to continue. So now from this point and this point, I have to come out here in space somewhere and get equal distance. So basically, I created an equilateral triangle right here, and I'm just simply going to create another equilateral triangle over here in this other area. So I continue with this arc, I go up to this point of intersection and make another point of intersection. So I just made another equilateral triangle from these 2 points. Now in my classes we made equilateral triangles. I'm not sure in the other classes if you did, right? But just think about it. What is a rhombus? A rhombus has to have all 4 sides the same length. So I just made all 4 sides the same length. I kept getting these intersections. If they have to be this distance from each other, well, I make this arc from this point A, right? So you go from point D, make the arc. Oops, let's do a different color. D, make the arc, and then go over here to A and make the arc. And then you can see it's equal distant from those points here. And then I go to this point, and I say, okay, well, I need to make equal distant here, so I can see that happen right there, and then I need to make equal distant here, so I can see that happened right there. And so here are my 2, if I drew a line through here, I would have 2 equilateral triangles. So there's my rhombus with all congruent side lengths. Sorry, I don't know that I explained that very well, but just ask your teacher, ask me in class if you want to talk about it further to help clarify if you didn't understand that. But I'm going to move on because we're getting long into these videos. Okay, so now you need to do some practice. So the first 2 are just a review of our parallelograms, but then we're going to have the rhombus, the square, and the rectangle on the back. So go ahead and pause now, this is what I would do, and try some of these on your own. Okay, and then when you're done, check your answer with the video, or check with the person sitting next to you. But if you're ever unsure, you can come back and watch the video because I'm going to explain them now. Otherwise, though, pause and do it first on your own so you can get the practice. Okay, so what do we know if this is a parallelogram? We know that opposite angles are congruent to each other. So I see that 4x equals 56. So I divide each side by 4, so 56 divided by 4 is 14, so I can see that x equals 14. Okay, well here the opposite angle doesn't exist. However, we also know that consecutive angles must be supplementary. So I know that 3y plus 16, plus 56, plus 16 plus 56 must equal 180 degrees. Or I could have subtracted 56 from 180 and set that equal to 3y plus 16. So let's do that. So we do 180 minus 56 minus 16, and that's going to be 108. Divide each side by 3, so y equals 36. Okay, number 2, GRP is a rectangle. So a rectangle, that means it's parallelogram. Opposite sides are parallel to each other. Opposite sides are congruent to each other. Opposite angles are parallel to each other. Opposite angles are congruent to each other. Diagonals bisect each other. Diagonals are congruent to each other. That's the extra one here in the triangle, or the rectangle bit. Segment GI is congruent to segment RP. So it says if PS equals 6x minus 4, so PS equals 6x minus 4, and GI equals 28, how do I find x? Well, if GI equals 28, then GS equals 14, and SI equals 14, which means PS and SR must equal 14. Therefore, 6x minus 4 must equal 14. So 6x equals 18. Therefore, x equals 3. So if this entire length is 28, each of these are 14. And therefore, this whole thing must be 28, or we could double that and set it equal to 28, or we can half it, and we know that 6x minus 4 must also equal 14. Number 3, ABCD is a rhombus. If the measure of angle 3 equals 6x plus 16, and the measure of angle 4 equals 8x, then find x. Well, what did we learn about the diagonals of a rhombus? Not only do they intersect each other perpendicular, they're the perpendicular bisectors of each other, or they intersect at 90 degrees, but we also learned that they bisect these opposite angles. So we know then that angle 3 is congruent to angle 4. Okay, go back and look. That's here at the beginning. Each diagonal of a rhombus bisects two angles of the rhombus, so the opposite angles are bisected. So that's what we're working with now. So then what do? We say 6x plus 16 must equal 8x, therefore 2x equals 16. Right, we subtract 6x, 2x equals 16, therefore x equals 8. Number 4, QUAD is a square. Find the value of x. If the measure of angle QSU is 10x minus 5. How am I going to do that? Well, if it's a square, then what just happened? Well, we know that these diagonals, because it's also a rhombus, right, so same as above, that means these have to be 45-degree angles. We also know that the diagonals perpendicularly bisect each other. So in other words, 10x minus 5 must equal 90 degrees. So 10x equals 95, therefore x equals 9.5. Right? Find the value of x. QSU is 10x minus 5, so that must be equal to 90 because they perpendicularly bisect each other, so that must equal 90 degrees, and therefore x equals 9.5. Moving on. Number 5 and 6. Number 5, if the measure of angle 1 equals 63 degrees, find the measure of angle 2. Well, it says it's a rectangle. So this is going back to that triangle sum theorem, right? If it's a rectangle, I know that this angle right here is 90 degrees. And if this is 90 degrees and this is 63 degrees, that means this has to add 63 and this angle have to add up to be 90, right? Or you could have said x plus 63 plus 90 has to add up to 180. However your brain wanted to think that through. So what does that mean? That means that x has to equal 17 degrees. Oh, sorry, 27 degrees. So x has to equal 27. And then we're doing other lengths. So xu is equal to 4y minus 2. So 4y minus 2 is this length. And RT is equal to 36. Okay, so we just did this. If this whole thing is 36, this is 18, and this is 18. And if these two pieces, Rx and Xt, are 18, then Xs must be equal to 18, and Xu must be equal to 18. So therefore, 4y minus 2 must be equal to 18. So 4y must equal 20, therefore y must equal 5. Number 8, ABCD is a square. Find BC. Oh, so we have to find the length of BC. Interesting. Well, what do we know about a square? We know all 4 side lengths are congruent, and because we're talking about side lengths, we then know that 4x minus 22 has to equal 14 minus 2x. So this is going to help us solve for x, right? So we add 2x to both sides. So we get 6x, and then we add 22 to both sides. So 6x equals 36. Therefore, x equals 6. Okay, that is not the answer, right? The question is find the length of BC. Well, BC equals AB equals CD equals AD. And if 14 minus 2x equals DC, then that also equals BC because it's a square. And if x is 6, then BC must equal 2. So all of the side lengths there are 2. And finally, ABCD is a rhombus. If the measure of angle ABD is 47 degrees, so right here, find the measure of angle BAC. Okay, so how am I going to do that? Well, I would go with a triangle sum, right? Because here in a rhombus, how do these diagonals intersect each other? They intersect each other at 90 degrees. They're perpendicular bisectors. So if this is a 90 degree angle here and this is a 47 degree angle here, this angle right here, angle BAC, must add to 47 to get 90, because this is already 90 taken care of. So then x has to equal 43 degrees. I'm sorry, so that's really the measure of angle BAC is equal to 43 degrees, because of that triangle sum theorem again. But it's also going back to the idea that the diagonals of a rhombus intersect each other at 90 degrees. Okay, so that's it. Do your textbook work, check your answers, use Hot Math for further assistance, and come see one of us during lunch if you're still having difficulties. Don't let it sit. There's far too much detail in all of these sections to just keep ignoring it and pretending you're going to get it at the end. You need to stay on top of it for this chapter, especially since you're going into the exam soon. So please come see any of us during these lunch help sessions or Thursday after school, or just go see your teacher and make arrangements for another time. Good luck, and we'll see you soon.